get started. So again, thank you guys so much for joining today. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping things. So on the bottom right hand of your screen, you're going to have a space to ask questions and a space to chat, as you all are using the chat session right now. Please keep all of your questions in the questions tab so we can be sure to answer them, and then all of your chat in the chat tab. We will have a live Q&A session at the end of the presentation, and then the recording of this webinar will be emailed to you after the session if you would like to watch a replay. And now I would like to take a minute to introduce our speaker today, Liz. Liz has been working as a customer support rep here at IntakeQ for about a year and a half. She is our designated payment specialist for our support team. She works directly with our merchant payment and support teams on PracticeQ Payments exclusively. Today, Liz will be displaying how you can use PracticeQ Payments in invoices to research payment data. She will also be reviewing best practices on how to use the Payments tab in your day-to-day processing. At the end of the presentation, like I just mentioned, we will have an open Q&A session to answer all of your payment-related questions. So Liz, you can take it away.
Thanks so much, Abby, and thank you everybody for taking the time to be here with us today. I'm so excited just to give you a little bit of a peek into the features that PracticeQ Pay offers and the integration between our system and the payment dashboard. So like I said, this is just one part of our system and of the features that we have. So before we get too deep into it, let's take a look at our agenda. So to get us started off, we're going to review a paid invoice. What data does it include? How can we use it? And how can we use it to review transaction data on the payment dashboard? We're going to use transaction data to locate the payment on the payments dashboard itself. And then we're going to review the payment data that's present on the dashboard, what it includes, and how you guys can use it just day to day and to diagnose any potential issues. Then we're going to close that loop. We'll do a reverse search. So we're going to actually use the data from the payment dashboard to come back into the PracticeQ system to locate an invoice. So I'm going to just give you guys a little bit of a preview here with our slides, and then I'm going to go into a live demo session and actually show you step by step how to get from, A to B to C and back to A. So let's start out with a paid invoice. As you can see here, this is what we're looking at. Miss Michelle paid her invoice for a follow-up appointment. Thank you so much, Michelle, for coming to our clinic. So we have a couple of payments here. Looks like a little test one, and then the $149.99 to pay the invoice complete. Now, when we look at a paid invoice, this includes all the data that you're going to need to locate a transaction on the payment dashboard. So this gives us a very quick little link. You click on details. Oops, I shouldn't have actually clicked there, guys. So we look at the details and it gives us an external ID, and this is our link to the payment dashboard. So this link here, like I said, is the external ID or the transaction ID. This link or ID number can also be copied and used as a search term. The last 4 digits of the card can also be used, and the customer email or their name. So all of this is recorded in the payment dashboard as soon as this payment is transacted. Now we take a look at the actual dashboard itself. This is where you land when you open it. Very handy little presentation of data here. Of course, this is not a real account that we're looking at today. So we don't have any gross sales to show you, nothing too exciting. But what we're really going to look at is the payments tab. So that's going to be the bread and butter of our research today, and our demo is just looking at what is included here. So just noted here very quickly, we have the date, the type of the transaction, customer name, the payment method, the source, which will always be, of course, your intakeQ account, and then the total of the transaction itself. Next up, we can click on any of these rows of payments and bring up more data on that transaction itself. So again, you have your amount, the status, this is nice and green. It's showing a successful charge. Whether or not you've sent a receipt is also included here. The deposit details are down here in this bottom section. Now, again, this isn't a live account. Unfortunately, we have no bank account tied here, so none of Michelle's funds have actually made it into our bank account. But luckily for you, that is likely not true, and your payments are connected to your bank account, in which case you'll see a handy little number down here naming the deposit. It also gives you a breakdown of the fee for that transaction and the transaction rate that you be paying for processing each of these charges. Now, one of the most handy things here is the most often overlooked, and it is this handy little box up here which copies your transaction ID. So again, that is the external ID that you saw on the paid invoice. A quick click here and you can copy it to your clipboard and go back into intakeQ/PracticeQ, go into your invoices, and you can locate the invoice which this transaction paid. So that's what this slide is going over. As you can see, we've copied that transaction ID and we've closed the loop. We've brought back up our paid invoice from Miss Michelle, just showing the payments that were made. And again, we can open this paid invoice, click the external ID, and go right back into the dashboard if we want to. So very handy little tricks here. This invoice search is not super new, but fairly new. So I'm suspecting that not everybody knew that you could take this and use it as a search for an invoice number with a transaction ID. So you can kind of search from A to B and then from B to A. And of course, I'll give you a live demo of exactly how that works here in just 1 second. So without further ado, I'm going to bring us into the account and let's take a look at exactly how we can find our payments on the dashboard handily. So here we are in our practitioner account. Just quickly on the invoices tab, of course, you can search for specific clients here. If you have an invoice number, you can bring it up, or you can handily get to it from Miss Michelle's page. Whichever way you do it, as soon as you pull up your paid invoice, you're going to see the 2 transactions that occurred. So it looks like we just gave a little test to make sure that we could run the charge. This is not something that we recommend in your day-to-day. You can always use pre-authorization methods for cards, which will handily void an authorized charge of 1 cent. So no need to actually do this on your day-to-day. We're going to take a look at this second one. So our nice big payment here for $149.99, which effectively paid off this invoice balance. So taking a look at this, you might be a little concerned that you don't see a settled date for this transaction, and anybody who's looked at their paid invoices that's connected to a bank account, you'll always have a settled date here once your transaction has been deposited into your bank. So again, where this is a test account, we haven't settled any actual transactions. These are not real details. We're just doing this for the sake of the demo. So we can take a look at this and see the last 4 digits of a Visa card were used. You can see the expiry date, and you can see who processed this charge, whether it was your practitioner, an assistant, or the cardholder themselves. And then you have your external ID here. And as I said, this is just a live link. You can also just highlight and copy it if need be. The link is only available to people who have access to the payment dashboard. So that would be your admin user. If for some reason you'd like other people to have access to open these links or to visit the payment dashboard through the More link here, More
Hi,
Payment
Liz.
Dashboard.
Hi, Liz. I am
Yes.
so sorry. It seems like a lot of our clients aren't able to see. They're asking if you could zoom in a little bit so that they can see your screen.
Would that help?
I think so. Let's try that.
All right, please do let me know if you're still not seeing here what we're looking at.
Thank you.
All right, so just to give a quick, we'll back up a little bit to make sure that everybody has seen this. We're looking at an invoice which has been paid here, and we're clicking on the details link, which gives us the last 4 digits, the card type and expiry, who processed this transaction, and our external ID. So just to go back over this, the external ID number here is a live link, which you can just click. You can also get to the payment dashboard via this More link. So More Payment Dashboard will also open the dashboard. Having access to that is restricted to the admin of the account. But that is also a permission which can be granted to other team members. So remember that you can give access to view these details to somebody else on the team if needed. And you can always reach out to the support team if you have any questions about permissions. So now we're going to actually click on this link. I know this is what you've all been waiting for. The excitement that can't be contained, the external ID link. And this is great because we don't have to look for anything here. That's a direct link between our system and the transaction payment details in the payment dashboard. So just to go back over this, we're here in our system. We can always go More, Payment Dashboard, and that opens you up to your main dash, you know, your gross sales, the sort of aggregate data that you can see. You can always go to the Payments tab this way. But if you want a handy and quick way to bring up just the details for a single transaction, we always recommend just clicking this external ID and coming straight to this transaction. So here, the details for this transaction, you can see the amount here, that it was a successful charge. Anything that's unsuccessful will be red and it will actually say failed charge. You have your customer details here. So thankfully this is, you know, nobody real, so we can't we can't worry too much about data here, but it's something that I wanted to note. Every time you open this, you do get, you know, customer details, name, email address. So these are things that if you do want to diagnose an issue, just make sure that we're not sending any private data over email. Even to our support team, we always want to keep these details under wraps and you know, secured. So looking at our credit, you can see it's a Visa credit. You can see here if this were a debit card transaction. So that's an easy way for you to kind of take a look. Did they use a debit card or did they use an actual credit card for this transaction? And you can see your last 4 digits. Now, where all of these customer details have been saved for this transaction, they're also all search terms that you can use on the payment dashboard. So before we go back into IQ or PQ with our handy payment ID here, I just want to give you a shot of all of the different ways that you can filter data on here. So I'm going to go back to the dashboard and bring up our payments. Now nothing here is filtered. These are all of the payments just back to the regular start date, which is 30 days. So taking a look here at our filter, you can, of course, filter back for multiple years. You can take a look at whether it's a credit card, bank, check, cash, and gift card. We don't register in our system. So you'll only ever have card or bank transactions. You can take a look at refunded credits, pre-authorizations, voided transactions, and of course your successful charges. Your source here will only be one of two things. It's going to be your virtual terminal or a physical terminal. So for those of you who have a physical terminal, a point of sale device, you'll actually have a little icon of an ATM. So instead of being this virtual terminal, you can see very quickly whether the source was from your physical terminal. Also here, like I said, your green charge and your customer names. So now we know Miss Michelle from the IntakeQ account, so we can always search by customer name. We can also search the last 4 digits of the card. The only thing that we really can't search is the total amount, which would give you not much useful data. Now, for those of you who have your bank accounts connected, you can search a payment, whether it has a deposit or no. And you can see in here who processed the transaction, whether it was the client or the system. So whether it was IntakeQ source, meaning an invoice was paid through here, or if it was processed by the actual admin user themselves. So here's your payments tab. You can also print transactions. Very handy. You can take these to PDF if you needed to see those. You can also filter by refunds and by failed attempts. So we don't have either of these. You know, thankfully for us, Michelle did not request a refund for any services, and we were able to run her card successfully both times. Now, as for best practices, I always recommend keeping this open whenever you are paying invoices. This tab is just such a handy resource for you to take a look and ensure that charges have gone through. If you have any failed attempts, you can easily bring them up here and you would see the error code present right in this top section, which would tell you exactly why a charge has failed. You can also check a refund status. So a payment that's been refunded will have 2 lines in the data. It will show you your payment and your refund and whether both were successful. So a lot of data here. It's also a good idea just to take a quick look over your day's payments. So if you're somebody who runs multiple payments a day or who runs using our automation and auto charge features, this is a great way just to get a quick look over your day's payments. Take a look and see if maybe Michelle Lee's card has insufficient funds and she's tried to pay an invoice, 3 or 4 times and it's just not going through. Sometimes you can protect your card holders by being vigilant and keeping an eye on your payments tab. So for example, clients who may not understand that their card is being declined, they can continue to attempt that transaction and lock their own card. So we just want everybody to have a visibility here and understand, the implications at the end of the day for people's credit or debit cards can be very vital for their day-to-day. So As a merchant, we just want you to keep an eye on things for them and for yourselves. So on top of protecting your card holders by making sure that they're not doing anything risky by running their own cards repeatedly, you also want to make sure that it's not something that you're doing on your day-to-day basis. So you can easily identify failed charges, reach out to the card holder and have them either work with their card company, their bank, or get another method of payment. Being on top of your payments day to day like this means that you don't get behind. And like I said, the data is all here, so in the open and so easy to access that it's very easy just to take a look at your day, your refunds, your failed attempts, make sure everything is running smoothly, and then go on about your day. So we can take a look at these, like I said, by name, by card ID, by transaction ID. Very, very many options here to search your data and to filter it. But what we want to do now is, like I said, close that loop. So we're going to open this up here and take a look at Michelle. So maybe instead of this being Michelle here, it could be Michelle's child who has an invoice. So you're in here and you don't recognize Michelle Lee because your client is not Michelle. Your client could be, Susie Lee, and you're thinking, who's this Michelle? What invoice is this? You're taking a look at your dashboard and you're just not recognizing who this might be. So you can easily copy this payment ID to your clipboard. And let's go back into our PracticeQ account. And of course, imagining you have a few more invoices to take a search through, we're going to use that external ID as a search term. And as you can see, this brings up our paid invoice by Michelle. So we can easily identify from one system to the other which invoice this transaction came from. So it's a really great way if you're just reviewing things in this system and you haven't just come from here to identify this payment back to your paid invoice, and here of course is your transaction. If you want to be double sure, you can always Control F. That's one of my favorite little search terms up here, and we can easily highlight that that is the matching transaction. And you can see, great, this is the invoice that's been paid. We know who it's tied back to, and all your data is here for payments. So that's sort of our little demo. I know it wasn't very much information, but it's very much important information. And I guess we'll take a look here at our next slide. All right, so that was my very fast little run through of our payment dashboard screen, and now we're going to open up the Q&A now that I have walked you all through that. So let's get the questions rolling, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Liz. I just want to take a minute to apologize for people who were unable to fully see the screen. We will be sending out a recording afterwards, so you are able to see the screen in full screen. So thank you for being flexible with that. But now we can get into the questions. So one of the questions that we have is that Karen asked that she can never seem to download the reports. Is there a way to do this instead of printing and screenshotting?
All right, so if I understand correctly, what you're asking about is reports in here. And we're going to close this deposit here. So we actually don't have any reports to show you here, but you should be able to easily open and export using this export link. So that's what I would do and recommend doing for either the deposits here or the reconciliation report, both should export into an Excel file. The payments tab, however, does print into a PDF and doesn't export into Excel. So what I would say is for this, you can actually copy and put it into Excel using like text to columns. But I would usually recommend using report specific data, like your deposits or reconciliation. These should export into Excel, and that gives you an easy way to filter through your transactions. So let me know if that's not what you were asking though.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Our next question is from Allison. I'm going to walk through this kind of slow because it's kind of long. She said, how can I auto charge for a package over time and pull it into a super bill for multiple practitioners without an associated payment on that specific day of charge? For example, evaluation by 3 practitioners over multiple days, client pays a full package over 6 months.
All right, so that question, if we can note that down and take a look at the specific case afterwards, because when it comes into like super billing, I'm actually really well versed in PracticeQ Payments only. So I want to talk to one of our team members who knows super billing and the package functionality really well, along with that specific account setup. So I think it's one, we need to make sure that we understand exactly what it is that you're asking us to do. So the different package payments over different timelines. And then 2, I want to make sure that we have a team member who's versed in super bills specifically, because I myself am not. So I'm so sorry that I actually can't answer you right off the bat. But let's note that one down so that we can make sure that we get back and connect on that.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll note that down and we'll have another member of our support team help you out with that one. So I think a question that we're all wondering, Liz, is what kind of information can someone search for a payment on the payments tab?
All right. So just information in general. You can search via customer email, their name, the last 4 digits of the card here, and all of your filter terms here. So if you only wanted to look for card specific transactions that only came from your virtual terminal, those are search types that you can do. But really what you're going to want to pay attention to most is filtering using these, the all payments, refunds, and failed attempts. As for the data that's going to appear here, you're always going to get the date of your transaction, the transaction type. So it's always going to be a charge, a refund, a failed attempt, or a void, and your customer name, payment details, the source, and the total. When you do this, you can also click open any of these payments and of course see these details listed differently. You can see the zip or location and your client email. You can also come here and locate the actual customer details from your payments tab.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you so much. Celeste wants to know, for clients with an expiring payment method, can we send a reminder or email message through the payments platform?
So our payments platform itself is not meant to communicate with clients. That is something that would be specific to your PracticeQ account. Now, I will say for most clients, expiring cards, if they have a recurring payment or a new payment set up, the new card details replace the old ones, essentially. So the first time they go to pay with their new card, it'll replace that old card. Our system does read card details for validation purposes. So you would notice if Michelle's details here, if her card had expired, our system would automatically remove this card if it's no longer valid. So you would notice that they do not have a card on file. For recurring charges, you'll notice that credit companies facilitate those. So what I'll say is, for example, if you notice your Netflix subscription, they go through month after month, and you never have to replace those card details, because it's a recurring payment. The credit card company knows that you want to pay that bill. They know your old card has simply expired, and the charge goes on to your new card the following month. So things like that, we don't really see an issue with card expiries being a big problem. It's usually one-off, a client here or there who might let a card expire, they never replace it, and you go to charge them and there's nothing on file. In those cases, you can always collect new details via consent form, or you can send them the invoice automatically. So that's also another option with automation. So if a charge fails, or if there's no credit card on file, you can automatically send the invoice that's generated to the cardholder. Of course, when they go to pay that invoice, you would then collect those card details again, and they would be on file for the next appointment thereafter.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. So Brian would like to know if you can kind of go back and show again how to find the invoice, a payment, how it's tied to the deposit report again.
Yeah. So when say you were here in your intakeQ account and you just opened your payment dashboard, or this is something that you keep open day to day, and you keep an eye on your payments here as they're happening. So if you see a charge come in here on your payments tab and you're not sure who this belongs to, I say go straight to the source and grab this payment ID on your clipboard. Clicking on it does copy it to your clipboard, and then you can go back in here, go to your lists, invoices, and you can paste that transaction ID right in here to your invoice number, and hit search. So that's how you can use this data here from this transaction over here. You can see our 1 cent transaction. We can actually copy this transaction ID. And of course, it's going to give us the same invoice because both have been paid here, both transactions. But this is where you can search for it. You can use that external ID as the invoice number. Of course, this also gives you customer details. So you might recognize the name or the email address, and these are both searchable in intakeQ. Now, the reason why I don't necessarily recommend using these details is because, like I said before, your cardholder might not be your actual customer. So for some people, their spouse might be paying for their appointment, a parent might be paying for their appointment. So your cardholder here, your customer here who has paid, and this is their card details, might not always match up one-to-one with your client here. In this case, it does. Michelle is the cardholder and the client, but to reliably always close that loop, you can just copy this ID, bring it back here, and use it as the invoice number. Now, if you wanted to use information here to search your deposit reports, so the reports which are in the payment dashboard data, you'll actually have a deposit listed here. So it will give you the deposit number and I believe the date that this transaction was deposited, and then you can locate it in your deposit report. So in here, you can search via the date. So if you know the date of your payment was July 30th, this would have been deposited by now. So you would see in here deposit, 11 with a long string of numbers. That's just the deposit ID number, and you could locate it here in your reports.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So we have another question: how to credit multiple invoices against a single payment?
So are we talking about taking multiple payments, or you have multiple appointments and you only want to charge a single time for those multiple invoices or multiple appointments?
It's not very specific. The question itself says how do we credit multiple invoices against a single payment? We can also circle back with our support team if we need to as well.
Yeah, so if I'm understanding correctly, you're talking about having multiple invoices and you only want to run one charge. So instead of charging them all separately. So our system allows you to add multiple appointments to a single invoice. And that's something that our support team can give an article for, I do believe. But that's what we would recommend, is to add multiple appointments or multiple services to a single invoice and to charge a single payment. And that way you don't run a card multiple times. Running a card multiple times, especially within a short amount of time, is a risk. It looks like you're testing a card or trying to get around security limits or maximum amounts, running smaller charges more frequently. So that type of behavior we always recommend against. It can cause cards to get locked, which means you wouldn't be able to run further charges. We always recommend just aggregating into a single invoice whenever possible to charge a single time.
Awesome. This one kind of is a little bit similar, but also a little bit different. So Megan, she asked, if someone pays an invoice and there is a credit balance left over, on the next invoice, when we apply the credit balance, will it show up on their income report?
Oh, that is a really good question. Now, from what I understand, it would not be, because the income would have been reported initially from the first appointment, but I am not 100% on that one. Can we note that down and get back to it? Because it's a really good question, and now I really want to know exactly how that breaks down.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have time for just one more question. So another question I think everyone here would love to know is, where can I check that a payment was successful or check the error code for an unsuccessful payment?
All right. So, firstly, for a successful charge and a successful deposit, you can always look on your invoice itself. So here you would see your card type, who processed it, your external ID. But a day or 2 days, within 2 business days after this transaction has run, you'll actually see a settled date, and you will know that that is the date that the money was deposited into your bank for this transaction. And that would also be present here on the payment dashboard under this deposit section. So you can see right now it says your deposit has not yet been processed. Please check back later for updates. Now ours is never going to deposit because we don't have an actual bank account. Nothing is connected here. But for For everybody else here, you'll actually see the deposit number and the date. So this is a great way to know that a transaction was successful and that it's settled. The success is this green charge, but the settled, meaning the money is in your account, would be present here under this deposit section. Anything that is unsuccessful will show type, failed attempt. And when you open it here, this will of course say failed attempt, and you'll have the error message present on the details of this screen. You can also quickly check any failed attempts in your account with a specific date just by clicking up here onto this failed attempts tab.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Liz. I think we're going to stop there right for today. And if we did not answer your question, we'll be sure to circle back with you with support. If you were asking questions in our chat tab, please make sure to put those into the questions tab so we can circle back with you as well. But again, thank you so much, Liz, for your presentation. It was super informative, and we hope to see you again soon. So thank